The text message came while I was getting my nails done at an upscale salon in downtown Seattle, preparing for what I thought would be a simple evening catching up with old classmates. So sorry to hear about your situation, Elena. If you need anything, just ask. It was from my high school friend Jessica, someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I stared at the message, confusion washing over me, as the nail technician applied the final coat of deep burgundy polish. What situation? I typed back quickly, but before I could send it, another message popped up, this one from Marcus, another classmate. Hey, we all chipped in for dinner tonight since we heard about your financial troubles. Don't worry about paying. My stomach dropped. Financial troubles? I owned 3 successful boutique hotels across the Pacific Northwest, had an investment portfolio that would make most people weep with envy, and had just closed a deal that would set me up for life. What were they talking about? I called Jessica immediately, my heart pounding as the phone rang. She picked up on the second ring, her voice filled with that particular tone people use when they're talking to someone they pity. Elena, honey, how are you holding up? We were all so shocked when we heard. Heard what, exactly? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. About the bankruptcy, the foreclosures, everything. Sarah told us at the planning committee meeting last week. She said you lost everything in some bad investments and that you've been too embarrassed to reach out to anyone. Sarah Martinez? My former best friend, my maid of honor, the person who knew every detail of my business dealings because I'd foolishly confided in her over wine-filled dinners for the past 5 years. Sarah, who'd been acting strange lately, asking pointed questions about my properties, my cash flow, my investment strategies. Jessica, I'm not bankrupt. I'm not even close to being in financial trouble. Silence on the other end. But Sarah showed us documentation, bank statements, foreclosure notices. She said you were too proud to ask for help, but that we should all rally around you tonight. My blood turned to ice. What kind of documentation? I don't know. Official-looking papers. She had a whole folder. Elena, are you saying it's not true? I was already standing up, ignoring the nail technician's protests about my wet polish. I'm saying someone is lying, and I think I know exactly who. The drive to the reunion at the Grand Cascade Hotel should have taken 20 minutes. I made it in 12, my mind racing faster than my Mercedes through the Seattle traffic. Sarah hadn't just spread rumors, she'd fabricated evidence. But why? Then it hit me like a physical blow. The investment opportunity she'd pitched me last month. The exclusive real estate development in Portland that she swore would triple our money in 2 years. I'd turned her down, told her it felt too risky, too good to be true. She'd pressed harder, gotten angry when I refused to liquidate assets to join her venture. "You'll regret this, Elena," she'd said that night as she left my penthouse apartment. "You think you're so smart with your hotels and your precious little empire, but you don't see the bigger picture." Now I was seeing it with crystal clarity. If everyone believed I was broke, desperate, humiliated, then Sarah could swoop in as the generous friend offering to help. She could pressure me into that investment, make me dependent on her supposed generosity. It was psychological warfare disguised as friendship. I called my accountant, David Chen, as I pulled into the hotel parking lot. He answered immediately, which he always did when I called. "Elena, good timing. I was just reviewing your quarterly reports. The hotel profits are up 18%, and your Microsoft stock split is looking fantastic." "David, I need you to listen carefully. Someone has been telling people I'm bankrupt. They claim to have bank statements and foreclosure notices proving it." "That's impossible. Your accounts are healthier than ever. You just deposited that $2.7 million from the Bellevue property sale. Your mortgage on the Whistler Hotel is paid off completely, and your credit score is 842. Can you email me a financial summary, complete portfolio breakdown, all account balances, property values? I need it in the next 10 minutes. "Absolutely. Elena, what's going on?" "Someone is trying to destroy my reputation, to manipulate me into a bad investment, and they picked the wrong night to do it." I sat in my car, watching my former classmates walking into the hotel through the elegant glass doors. These were people I'd grown up with, people who'd known me when I was selling friendship bracelets in middle school to save money for college. Some of them were giving each other concerned looks, probably discussing my supposed financial ruin. My phone buzzed with David's email. I opened the attachment and felt a surge of vindication. There it was in black and white. Total net worth of $14.3 million, liquid assets of $3.8 million, properties valued at $8.7 million, and investment accounts that would fund a comfortable retirement 3 times over. But I needed more than just my own documentation. If Sarah had fabricated bank statements, I needed to prove they were fake. I called my banker, Jennifer Walsh, at Seattle First. Elena, working late on a Saturday? Jennifer, this might sound strange, but has anyone requested copies of my bank statements recently? Anyone other than me or my accountant? Absolutely not. Those are confidential documents. Even if someone claimed to be you, they'd need proper identification and security verification. Why? Someone is claiming to have bank statements showing I'm bankrupt and in foreclosure. That's identity theft and fraud. Your primary account alone has over $1.6 million. Your business accounts are flourishing. Whoever is doing this could face serious criminal charges. Perfect. I had my ammunition. Now I needed to walk into that reunion and expose Sarah's lies in front of everyone she'd manipulated.
But I also needed to be smart about it. Charging in angry would make me look desperate, exactly what she wanted. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. The burgundy dress I'd chosen was elegant, expensive looking without being flashy. My jewelry was understated but clearly real. I looked like exactly what I was, a successful businesswoman who could buy and sell half the people in that room. The lobby of the Grand Cascade was decorated with our school colors, navy and gold, with blown-up photos from our senior year scattered around. I saw myself in one of them, young and determined, already dreaming of the empire I'd built. That girl would be proud of what I'd accomplished. She'd also be furious at what Sarah was trying to do. I spotted Sarah immediately. She was holding court near the registration table, surrounded by a cluster of our former classmates. She was wearing a black dress that screamed expensive, her blonde hair perfectly styled, playing the role of the concerned friend to perfection. "Oh, there she is," I heard her say as she noticed me approaching. Her voice carried that particular mix of sympathy and superiority that made my skin crawl. "Elena, sweetheart, we're all so glad you decided to come tonight despite everything." The group turned to look at me, their faces a mixture of pity and curiosity. These were people I'd shared homeroom with, people who'd cheered at my graduation speech, people who'd celebrated with me when my first hotel opened. Now they were looking at me like I was a charity case. "Despite what, exactly?" I asked, keeping my voice light and curious. Sarah's smile faltered for just a second. "Well, you know, your situation. We don't need to get into details here." "Actually, I think we do need to get into details, because I'm a little confused about what situation you're referring to." The circle around us was growing. More classmates were drifting over, sensing drama. Perfect. I wanted an audience for what was about to happen. "Sarah, you told everyone I'm bankrupt, is that right?" She had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Elena, maybe we should talk privately." "No, I think this conversation needs to happen right here, right now. You showed people documentation of my supposed financial troubles, bank statements, foreclosure notices. Is that correct?" "I was just trying to help. I thought people should know so they could support you." "Support me with what? With pity? With charity? Or were you hoping to pressure me into that investment scheme you've been pushing?" The crowd was silent now, sensing the shift in dynamics. Sarah's perfectly composed mask was starting to crack. "I don't know what you're implying." I pulled out my phone and opened David's email. "I'm implying that you fabricated documents to make people believe I was broke so you could manipulate me. But here's the thing, Sarah. I just got off the phone with my accountant and my banker." I held up my phone so the group could see the financial summary. Net worth, $14.3 million. Liquid assets, $3.8 million. Properties owned outright, 4, including 3 hotels. Investment portfolio, diversified and growing. The silence was deafening. I could see people's faces changing as they processed what I was saying. The pity was evaporating, replaced by confusion, and then anger as they realized they'd been lied to. Sarah, I continued, my voice growing stronger, you told these people I was facing foreclosure, but I don't have a single mortgage. You told them I was bankrupt, but my businesses are thriving. You told them I needed financial help, but I could write a check for more money than most people make in a decade. She was backing away now, her face pale. There must be some mistake. The only mistake was trusting you with information about my life that you used to try to destroy my reputation. Jessica stepped forward from the crowd, her face flushed with embarrassment and growing anger. Sarah, you showed us bank statements with Elena's name on them. You said she was losing her house. I can explain, Sarah stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. She was looking around frantically, searching for an escape route or perhaps hoping someone would come to her defense. No one moved to help her. Marcus crossed his arms, his expression dark. We set up a collection for you, Elena. Sarah organized it. She said you were too proud to ask for help, so we needed to surprise you with financial support. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. How much did she collect? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. $1,500, Jessica replied. We were going to present it to you tonight. Sarah said she'd handle giving it to you privately so you wouldn't be embarrassed. I turned to Sarah, who was now visibly trembling. Where's that money, Sarah? It's safe. I have it. In your purse? Or did it perhaps go toward that Portland investment opportunity you've been desperate to fund? The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Sarah's eyes darted between the faces surrounding us, all of them now displaying varying degrees of suspicion and outrage. That's not what happened, she whispered, but her denial was hollow. I pulled up my banking app on my phone. Would you like to see my account balance? The real one, not whatever forgery you created. I held the screen toward the group. Current checking account balance, $1,643,000. That's just my primary account. Should I show them the business accounts too?
A gasp rippled through the crowd. These weren't small-town people who'd never seen wealth, but $14 million was still impressive by Seattle standards. More importantly, it was the complete opposite of bankruptcy. Sarah finally found her voice, desperation making it shrill. You're all acting like I committed some terrible crime. Maybe I was misinformed about Elena's situation. Misinformed? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sarah, you didn't just spread rumors. You created fake bank statements. You organized a charity collection under false pretenses. You committed fraud. Prove it, she snapped, some of her old arrogance returning. You can't prove anything. That's when I realized she'd made a crucial mistake. In her panic and anger, she'd just challenged me to prove fraud, which meant she was admitting the documents existed and that she was responsible for them. I speed-dialed David Chen, putting the call on speaker. He answered immediately. Elena, how did the confrontation go? David, I'm here with Sarah Martinez and about 30 of our high school classmates. Sarah has been telling everyone I'm bankrupt and has allegedly shown them bank statements proving it. Can you confirm for everyone here what my actual financial status is? David's voice came through clearly, professional and precise. Elena Rodriguez currently maintains accounts with Seattle First National totaling approximately $4.2 million. Her real estate holdings are valued at $8.7 million, with no outstanding mortgages. Her investment portfolio through Morrison Financial is worth approximately $1.4 million. She has no debt beyond current credit card balances that are paid in full monthly. By any reasonable standard, Miss Rodriguez is what we would classify as a high net worth individual. The silence that followed was profound. I could see people processing this information, their faces cycling through confusion, anger, and embarrassment. Sarah, I said, ending the call, I think you have some explaining to do. But Sarah was already moving, pushing through the crowd toward the exit. I followed her, and so did several others. She made it to the parking lot before I caught up with her. Running away won't solve this, I called out. She spun around, her mask finally completely dropped. The concerned friend was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. You think you're so perfect, don't you? Elena Rodriguez, the success story. Elena Rodriguez who started with nothing and built an empire. What's your point, Sarah? My point is that some of us didn't get lucky breaks. Some of us have been struggling while you've been collecting properties like they're trading cards. Lucky breaks. I stepped closer, my voice low and dangerous. I worked 3 jobs through college. I saved every penny for 5 years to buy my first property. I lived in a studio apartment and ate ramen for dinner so I could invest in my future. What lucky breaks are you talking about? You had family money. My family cleaned houses for a living. My father was a janitor. What family money? Sarah's composure cracked further. You always made everything look so easy. The perfect business, the perfect life. Do you know what it's like to watch your friends succeed while you're drowning? So you decided to destroy my reputation instead of asking for help? You decided to steal money from our classmates by lying about my situation? I needed that Portland investment to work. It was my only chance to catch up, to finally have something of my own. By committing fraud? By leveling the playing field. Jessica had followed us outside, along with Marcus and several others. They'd heard enough of the conversation to understand what was happening. Sarah, Jessica said, her voice shaking with anger, you took our money under false pretenses. That's theft. I was going to pay it back. With what money? Marcus demanded. If Elena was actually broke, where were you going to get $1,500 to pay us back? Sarah couldn't answer that. The logical holes in her scheme were becoming impossible to ignore. I pulled out my phone again. I'm calling the police. Wait, Sarah grabbed my arm. Please, Elena, I'm sorry. I'll give the money back. I'll tell everyone the truth. You should have thought about that before you created fake documents and stole from our friends. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I just wanted you to invest with me. The Portland deal is real. It's legitimate. I just needed partners. So you decided to destroy my reputation and steal money to make it happen? Sarah's face crumpled. I'm desperate, Elena. My business is failing. My marriage is falling apart. I'm about to lose my house for real. When I saw how successful you were, I snapped. There it was, the truth underneath all the lies and manipulation.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Sarah wasn't evil. She was drowning and had made increasingly desperate choices to try to save herself. But desperation didn't excuse fraud. The police arrived quickly. Officer Martinez, no relation despite the shared surname, was professional and thorough. She took statements from me, from Jessica and Marcus about the money collection, from several others who'd seen the fake documents. Ma'am, she said to Sarah, we'll need to see those bank statements you showed people. Sarah's last hope evaporated. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Officer Martinez examined the documents, her expression growing more serious with each page. These are sophisticated forgeries, she said, professional quality. This isn't something someone whipped up on their home computer. Where did you get these made? I asked Sarah. There's a guy downtown. He does documents for people who need clean credit histories. Officer Martinez was already on her radio, calling for backup and requesting a detective. Ma'am, you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and theft by deception. As the handcuffs clicked into place, Sarah looked at me one last time. I really am sorry, Elena. I never meant for it to get this far. You meant for it to work, I replied. The only thing you're sorry about is getting caught. The detective who arrived, Detective Kim, was interested in the document forger Sarah had mentioned. This could be part of a larger operation. We'll need those documents as evidence. As Sarah was led away in the police car, the remaining classmates stood in the parking lot, processing what had just happened. The person they'd trusted, the person who'd organized their charity collection, had been running a sophisticated con game. Elena, Jessica said, I feel terrible about this. We should have verified the information before believing it. She's convincing, I replied. She had me believing in her friendship for years, but this wasn't your fault. Marcus shook his head. $1,500. She destroyed her life for $1,500. No, I said, watching the police car disappear into the Seattle traffic. She destroyed her life for the lies she told herself about deserving what other people worked for. The reunion continued, but the energy had completely shifted. What started as a night of nostalgia and catching up had become something much more complex. People were processing not just what Sarah had done, but how easily they'd been manipulated into believing her lies. Detective Kim asked me to stay available for follow-up questions, and I agreed to testify when the case went to trial. As I walked back into the hotel, I noticed how differently people were looking at me now. The pity was gone, replaced by a mixture of respect, curiosity, and in some cases, obvious discomfort. "Elena," called out Mrs. Thompson, our former English teacher who'd been invited as a guest of honor. "I heard there was some commotion outside. Is everything all right?" I found myself in the position of having to explain the situation again, this time to faculty members and classmates who hadn't witnessed the confrontation. Word spread quickly through the ballroom, and I watched as people's expressions changed when they learned the truth. Tony Williams, who'd been student body president, approached me with a sheepish expression. "Elena, I owe you an apology. Sarah told me you were struggling, and I actually avoided talking to you tonight because I didn't want to make you uncomfortable by mentioning business success." "You don't need to apologize, Tony. She fooled all of us." "But that's just it," he said, running a hand through his graying hair. "She didn't fool all of us. She fooled the people who cared about you, the people who wanted to help. That makes it worse somehow." He was right. Sarah had weaponized our compassion, turned our desire to support a friend into a tool for her own manipulation. It was a particularly cruel form of betrayal because it exploited the best parts of people's nature. Throughout the evening, classmates kept approaching me with similar stories. Amanda Chen mentioned that Sarah had discouraged her from reaching out to me directly, claiming I was too embarrassed to discuss my situation. Robert Kim said Sarah had suggested organizing a business networking event to help me find new opportunities, but wanted to wait until after the reunion when I was feeling more stable. Each revelation painted a clearer picture of how calculated Sarah's scheme had been. She hadn't just spread rumors, she'd created an entire narrative designed to isolate me from potential support while positioning herself as my savior. "The thing that bothers me most," said Maria Santos, who'd been my lab partner in chemistry, "is how natural she made it sound. She presented it like she was protecting your privacy while still making sure you got help." David Chen called me around 10 o'clock. "Elena, I wanted to give you an update. I've been reviewing your accounts more carefully since this afternoon. There are no unauthorized access attempts, no unusual activity. Your financial information is secure." "What about the fake documents? How accurate were they?" "That's the disturbing part. Whoever created them had access to some real information. Your account numbers were correct, though the balances were fabricated. The property addresses were accurate, but showed false foreclosure proceedings. Someone did their homework." This revelation sent a chill through me. Sarah hadn't just created random fake documents, she'd incorporated real details from my financial life, which meant she'd been planning this for much longer than I'd initially realized. "David, I need you to change all my account numbers and security protocols. If she had access to accurate information, I need to assume she might still have access." "Already in progress. I'll have new cards and account numbers issued by Monday." The rest of the reunion felt surreal. People kept congratulating me on my success, but there was an undercurrent of awkwardness. Some classmates seemed genuinely happy for me, while others appeared uncomfortable with the wealth disparity that had been so dramatically revealed. Lisa Park, who'd always been brutally honest, summed it up perfectly. "I have to admit, Elena, knowing you're worth $14 million makes me feel weird about complaining that my mortgage payment went up $50. Lisa, my net worth doesn't change who I am or invalidate your concerns about your mortgage. Intellectually, I know that. Emotionally, it's harder." Her honesty was refreshing compared to the careful politeness most people were showing me. I realized that Sarah's lies had created a problem, but my wealth was creating a different kind of barrier. As the evening wound down, I found myself in conversation with Jake Morrison, who'd been the class clown but had grown into a thoughtful adult. He was one of the few people treating me exactly the same as he had before the Sarah situation. "You know what's funny?" he said, swirling the ice in his drink. Sarah always talked about you like you were her closest friend. She name-dropped you constantly at the planning meetings. Elena and I were just discussing, or Elena always says, we all thought you two were still super tight. We were until tonight, or at least I thought we were. That's what makes this so twisted. She wasn't just scamming strangers, she was destroying someone she claimed to love. His observation hit home. The financial fraud was serious, but the personal betrayal cut deeper. Sarah had sat in my living room, drinking my wine, listening to my struggles and fears, and then used all of that intimate knowledge to craft a narrative designed to humiliate me. I left the reunion around 11, but not before exchanging real contact information with people I genuinely wanted to stay connected with. Several classmates apologized again for believing Sarah's lies, but I reminded them that trust should be the default in friendships. The problem wasn't their willingness to believe, it was her willingness to lie. Detective Kim called the next morning with an update. Miss Rodriguez, we executed a search warrant on Sarah Martinez's home and office. We found additional forged documents, not just yours. She's been running similar schemes on at least 3 other people. Other people from our class? No, business associates and friends from other contexts. This appears to be a pattern of behavior, not a one-time desperate act. This information changed everything. Sarah hadn't just made a terrible decision in a moment of crisis, she'd been systematically defrauding people. The woman I'd trusted with my secrets was actually a career criminal. The trial took place 6 months later. I testified about our friendship, about the fake documents, about the money she'd collected from our classmates. Sarah's defense attorney tried to paint her as a desperate woman who'd made poor choices due to financial pressure, but the evidence of multiple victims destroyed that narrative. Sarah received 3 years in state prison and was ordered to pay restitution to all her victims. The document forger she'd used was part of a larger identity theft ring that the police had been investigating for months. During her sentencing, Sarah asked to address the court. She looked directly at me and said, "Elena, I know I can never undo what I did. I want you to know that my jealousy of your success ate away at me for years. Instead of being inspired by your achievements, I let them make me bitter. That's not your fault, it's mine." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was an acknowledgement of responsibility. I appreciated the honesty, even if it came too late to save our friendship. The reunion incident taught me several important lessons about wealth, friendship, and trust. First, success can make people uncomfortable in ways I hadn't anticipated. Some classmates started treating me differently, not because of anything I'd done, but because of what I represented to them. Second, I learned to be more careful about who I shared financial information with. My openness about my business dealings, which I'd thought was normal friend conversation, had provided Sarah with the ammunition she needed to attack me. Most importantly, I learned that betrayal often comes from the people closest to us, not because they're inherently evil, but because proximity gives them the tools and knowledge needed to hurt us effectively. The reunion committee sent out an email a week after the event, acknowledging what had happened and apologizing to everyone who'd been deceived. They returned the money that had been collected to each contributor, since Sarah had already spent most of it. Several genuine friendships emerged from that chaotic night. People who'd supported me without expecting anything in return, people who'd been appropriately outraged by Sarah's deception, people who treated me the same regardless of my bank account balance. A year later, I received a letter from Sarah in prison. She'd completed a financial literacy program and was working on a degree in social work. She wrote about wanting to help people avoid the financial desperation that had led to her crimes. She still hadn't explicitly apologized, but she seemed to understand the damage she'd caused. I never responded to the letter. Forgiveness is possible, but trust, once shattered so completely, can't be rebuilt. Sarah had taught me that some betrayals are too fundamental to overcome, no matter how much time passes or how much the other person claims to have changed. The experience also reinforced something I'd always believed. Real wealth isn't just about money. It's about surrounding yourself with people who celebrate your successes instead of resenting them. People who would never dream of exploiting your trust for their own gain. Today, I'm more selective about sharing personal information, more careful about who I trust with the details of my life. But I refuse to let Farah's betrayal make me cynical about friendship itself. The majority of people are decent, honest, and worthy of trust. The key is learning to identify the exceptions before they can do serious damage. Sometimes people ask me if I regret confronting Sarah so publicly at the reunion. The answer is no. Her lies needed to be exposed, not just to clear my reputation, but to prevent her from victimizing others. Public accountability, uncomfortable as it was, served a purpose beyond just my personal vindication. Sarah's scheme failed not because I was particularly clever or suspicious, but because she got greedy and created evidence that could be verified. If she'd stuck to spreading rumors without fake documents, if she hadn't organized that money collection, she might have gotten away with damaging my reputation indefinitely. In the end, the reunion became a story about more than just financial deception. It became a lesson about the corrosive power of envy, the importance of verifying information before acting on it, and the reality that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones most capable of destroying us. 3 years after the reunion incident, I received an unexpected phone call that would test everything I'd learned about trust and second chances. It was from Detective Kim, who had been promoted to lieutenant in the Financial Crimes Division. "Elena, I wanted to give you a heads up. Sarah Martinez is being released next week on good behavior. Her parole officer mentioned that she's expressed interest in reaching out to her victims to make amends as part of her rehabilitation program." The news hit me harder than I expected. I'd built a comfortable mental distance from the whole situation, focusing on growing my business and surrounding myself with trustworthy people. The prospect of Sarah re-entering my orbit, even peripherally, brought back a flood of complicated emotions. Does she have my contact information? Not through official channels, but you know how these things work. If she's determined to find you, she probably can. I thanked Lieutenant Kim and hung up, staring out the window of my newest property, a boutique hotel in Vancouver that had just finished renovations. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was expanding internationally while Sarah was preparing to re-enter society with a criminal record that would limit her opportunities for years to come. That evening, I called my business partner and closest friend, Michelle Torres, who'd become my confidant during the aftermath of the reunion debacle. Michelle was one of the few people who knew the full details of what had happened and had helped me process the complex emotions that came with such a profound betrayal. "She wants to make amends," I told Michelle over dinner at our favorite sushi restaurant. "What do you think that means?" Knowing what I know about Sarah, it could mean anything from a genuine apology to another manipulation designed to get something from you. Michelle was right to be cautious. She'd met Sarah a few times during our friendship and had always maintained that something felt off about her, though she'd never been able to pinpoint exactly what. The question is, do you want to hear what she has to say? I'd been asking myself that same question since Lieutenant Kim's call. Part of me was curious about what 3 years in prison had done to Sarah, whether she genuinely reflected on her actions or simply learned to present a more convincing facade of remorse. "I think I do want to hear it," I said finally, not because I'm ready to forgive her, but because I want to understand how someone I trusted so completely could deceive me so thoroughly. 2 weeks later, Sarah's letter arrived. It was handwritten on plain paper, her familiar script bringing back memories of birthday cards and thank you notes from happier times. The letter was longer than I'd expected, 5 pages of careful penmanship that must have taken her hours to compose. She started by acknowledging the harm she'd caused, not just to me, but to our mutual friends who'd been manipulated into contributing money under false pretenses. She wrote about the therapy she'd undergone in prison, the financial literacy courses she'd completed, and her work with other inmates who'd committed similar crimes. "I want you to know that I understand now that my actions weren't just about money or even desperation," she wrote. "They were about a deep-seated belief that I deserved what you had worked for without being willing to do the work myself. I convinced myself that your success was somehow unfair, that you'd been given advantages I hadn't received." The letter continued with specific acknowledgments of her deceptions. She admitted to creating the fake bank statements months before the reunion, planning to use them if the right opportunity arose. She confessed to researching my properties and business dealings, not out of friendly interest, but to find vulnerabilities she could exploit. Most surprisingly, she revealed that the Portland investment opportunity had been largely fictional. There was a real development project, but her role in it was minimal, and the returns she'd promised were wildly exaggerated. She'd been hoping to use any money she collected to pay off personal debts, and maybe, if she was lucky, secure a small stake in something legitimate. I know this doesn't excuse what I did, the letter concluded, but I wanted you to know that I see clearly now how my envy poisoned our friendship long before I acted on it. You deserved a friend who celebrated your success, not one who secretly resented it. The letter sat on my desk for 3 days before I decided what to do with it. I wasn't ready to respond, but I also wasn't ready to throw it away. Instead, I filed it with the other documents from the case, a reminder of how complicated human nature could be. A month later, Michelle surprised me with news that she'd been researching Sarah's story independently. "I hope you don't mind," she said, "but I wanted to understand what happened to the other victims." What she'd discovered was both troubling and illuminating. The 3 other people Sarah had defrauded were all successful professionals who'd trusted her with personal information that she'd later weaponized against them. One was a doctor who'd confided about malpractice insurance concerns. Sarah had spread rumors about potential lawsuits and collected money from mutual friends for legal defense funds. Another was a real estate agent who'd mentioned cash flow issues during a slow market. Sarah had created fake foreclosure documents and solicited emergency loans from the agent's clients. "The pattern is clear," Michelle said. "She targeted successful people who'd shared vulnerabilities with her, then used those vulnerabilities to create believable crisis scenarios." This revelation helped me understand that what happened to me wasn't personal in the way I'd initially thought. Sarah hadn't targeted me because of any particular flaw in our friendship. She'd targeted me because I fit her preferred victim profile: successful, trusting, and willing to share personal information. The realization was both comforting and disturbing. Comforting because it meant I hadn't missed obvious red flags that should have warned me about Sarah's true nature. Disturbing because it suggested that Sarah's crimes were more calculated and less emotion-driven than I'd believed. 6 months after Sarah's release, I encountered her unexpectedly at a coffee shop in downtown Seattle. I was meeting with a potential investor for a new property acquisition when I saw her in line, looking older and thinner than I remembered, but still recognizably the woman who'd been my closest friend for years. Our eyes met across the crowded cafe, and I saw her face cycle through the same emotions I was feeling: surprise, recognition, uncertainty, and something that might have been shame. She paid for her coffee quickly and started to leave, but something made me excuse myself from my meeting and follow her outside. "Sarah," I called, and she stopped, turning to face me with an expression of resigned inevitability. "Elena, I wasn't sure if you'd gotten my letter." "I got it." We stood on the sidewalk, 2 women who'd once shared everything, now struggling to find words for this moment. She looked genuinely different, not just physically, but in her demeanor. The confidence and easy charm that had once defined her were gone, replaced by something more tentative and careful. "I know you probably don't want to hear this," she said, "but seeing you successful and thriving makes me happy. Not bitter, not jealous, just happy that you weren't permanently damaged by what I did." "Are you doing okay?" I asked, surprising myself with the question. "I'm working at a nonprofit that helps people with financial literacy. The pay is terrible, but it's honest work. I'm living in a studio apartment and taking the bus everywhere, but I'm not stealing or lying or manipulating anyone." There was something matter-of-fact about her response that made me believe her. This wasn't the Sarah who'd crafted elaborate deceptions. This was someone who seemed genuinely committed to a different way of living. "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued. "I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to be the person I should have been when we were friends." We talked for another 10 minutes, a strange conversation that felt both familiar and completely foreign. She asked about my hotels, and I found myself sharing basic information without the wariness I'd expected to feel. She told me about her work helping people avoid the financial desperation that had led to her crimes. When we parted ways, we didn't exchange contact information or make plans to meet again. But there was a sense of closure that I hadn't realized I needed. The Sarah I'd known was gone, destroyed by her own choices and the consequences that followed. The woman I'd just spoken with was someone new, someone I didn't know well enough to trust, but who seemed genuinely committed to earning redemption through actions rather than words. That evening, I reflected on how profoundly the reunion incident had changed my approach to both business and personal relationships. I'd implemented stronger financial security measures, but more importantly, I'd developed a better understanding of how success could affect the dynamics of friendship. I'd learned to be more selective about sharing detailed financial information, not out of paranoia, but out of recognition that such information could create unnecessary complications in relationships. I'd also become better at recognizing when someone's interest in my business dealings seemed motivated by something other than genuine friendship. The experience had taught me that wealth creates its own set of social challenges. Some people became uncomfortable around me once they knew my net worth, while others became overly interested in ways that felt manipulative. Learning to navigate these dynamics had been an unexpected education in human psychology. Perhaps most importantly, I discovered that betrayal, while painful, didn't have to be permanently destructive. The reunion incident had initially made me more suspicious and guarded, but over time it had evolved into a source of wisdom about trust, friendship, and the complex motivations that drive human behavior. My business continued to thrive, expanding into new markets and property types. The employee ownership programs I'd implemented were generating exactly the kind of loyalty and investment I'd hoped for. The charitable foundations I'd established were making meaningful differences in communities throughout the Pacific Northwest. But the personal growth that emerged from navigating Sarah's betrayal felt equally valuable. I'd learned to differentiate between healthy caution and paralyzing suspicion, between appropriate boundaries and isolation. The experience had made me a better judge of character and a more thoughtful friend to the people who'd proved themselves trustworthy. Looking back, I sometimes wondered what would have happened if I'd never discovered Sarah's deception. Would she have escalated her manipulations? Would other friends have become victims of her schemes? The reunion confrontation, painful as it was, had likely prevented additional harm to people I cared about. The story had become something I occasionally shared with other entrepreneurs, particularly women who were navigating the complex social dynamics that often accompany financial success. It served as a cautionary tale about the importance of protecting personal information while maintaining genuine connections with trustworthy people. 3 years after that chance encounter at the coffee shop, Sarah was still working at the nonprofit, had completed her parole successfully, and was pursuing a master's degree in social work. We didn't maintain contact, but mutual acquaintances occasionally provided updates that suggested her commitment to change was genuine and sustained. The reunion story had taught me that people are capable of profound transformation, both positive and negative. Sarah's betrayal had revealed capabilities for deception that I never would have imagined, but her subsequent rehabilitation suggested capabilities for change that were equally surprising. Human nature, I'd learned, was far more complex and variable than I'd previously understood. The incident had also reinforced my belief in the importance of accountability. Public consequences for Sarah's actions served multiple purposes: clearing my reputation, preventing additional victims, and providing Sarah with the external pressure needed to confront her behavior honestly. Sometimes, compassion requires courage to hold people responsible for their choices. Today, when people ask me about the reunion story, I emphasize that it's not really about financial fraud or fake documents. It's about the corrosive power of unacknowledged envy, the importance of verifying information before acting on it, and the reality that the people closest to us have the greatest power to help or harm us. Most importantly, it's a story about resilience and the possibility of emerging stronger from betrayal. Sarah's deception could have made me bitter and suspicious, could have damaged my ability to form new friendships or trust business partners. Instead, it became a source of wisdom that improved my judgment and deepened my appreciation for the people who'd proved themselves worthy of trust. Looking back, I sometimes wondered what would have happened if I'd never discovered Sarah's deception. Would she have escalated her manipulations? Would other friends have become victims of her schemes? The reunion confrontation, painful as it was, had likely prevented additional harm to people I cared about. The story had become something I occasionally shared with other entrepreneurs, particularly women who were navigating the